beautiful people, hello. I am back to share about my past life regression experiences. So I actually decided to come up the meander to find some chakra stones for my Reiki level 2 group who is graduating today. We're doing the attunements, but the place that I went to was closed, and I know that the other places don't have what I'm looking for because I've already looked at them. And so I thought, oh, shall I go home or shall I just maybe go somewhere else up the meander? Nonetheless, I'm still on the highway in that kind of mood where I could seriously just drive until I get somewhere. Feeling really free and open and expansive and connected and full of gratitude and love. Just feeling really good. Anyway, so I in my last video I talked about authenticity, and I mentioned that I would share about my past life regression experiences. So here I am doing that. I might jump around, but I'm going to try to stay in order. There aren't that many, but the ones that I did experience were pretty significant. The first of them being in I did a QHHT session when I started to feel some contraction in my consciousness, and I wanted to understand what was going on, why there was this contraction, and I had a bunch of other answers. Some pains that I used to get this headache every year at the back of my head, every year without fail, and it would last about 5 days. Normal medication wouldn't work, and it was a consistent 5 days. This started, I remember the day, it was on New Year's Day. I can't tell you exactly which year. It could have been 2012 or 2013, but it was before I left for Korea. But I remember on that day, all the young people in my family went to a water park, but my dog had eaten himself sick. Well, that was actually no, it was New Year's Day. Yeah, but my family, all the young people in my family had gone to I feel like I'm mixing two events right now, but nonetheless, this is how I've remembered it for all the years. And suddenly, I have a question mark next to the memory. But anyway, I was at home. All the young people had gone somewhere, and it was New Year's Day, and this headache started. And I eventually went to the doctor about 3 days later and got a prescription which helped, but was only like kind of resolved after 5 days. But every year without fail, the headache would return even while I was in Korea. It was so intense that if I looked down, it felt like my head would explode through the back. And so I also wanted to understand what this headache was about. Also extreme period pains to the point of my first out-of-body experience in grade 12, my matric school year, was when I had my first out-of-body experience. But it was because of the excruciating period pains that I used to have back then. So I really wanted to understand what was going on in my physical body, as well as in like why I was contracting in consciousness, just things I didn't know about myself that I had the desire to know. And so I went into this QHHT session to see if I could resolve some of the stuff. I had been reading a lot of Dolores Cannon's books, absolutely loved them, and I wanted to explore them for myself. In that experience, I was regressed into a time where I understood it to be New York, but it wasn't way back because the clothing was still relatively modern. My dad was he worked in real estate, and I learned the business from him. He had his own business. I learned it from him, and eventually I took over and manage the company. As a child, my mum had died really young, and my dad was always really busy, so I basically like raised myself. There was a cook that we had, somebody who kind of did the cooking and the cleaning of the house. I remember what the doors of the house looked like, massive wooden doors with like 3 or 4 steps coming up to the doors, wall to wall with other houses. And this little girl had an ability to connect with water spirits. Still don't know what what that was about, but she had abilities in that lifetime. She connected with these water spirits, communicated with them, until eventually she had the desire to develop a relationship with her dad, and so she began ignoring those parts of herself in order to know her dad, to have a relationship with him. So she learned the business from him. There was a guy who was unhappy about a suggestion from her dad, to buy a certain property that went south. He lost a lot of money, and he blamed the dad, who took none of the responsibility. But he came after me in that lifetime for me to resolve it. I was standing at a traffic light. In fact, I don't even know if there were traffic lights at that time, to be honest. All I remember was that I was at a crossroads on the street waiting to cross the road. As soon as I crossed, the guy came to me at the crossroads, and he started yelling at me about this, and I just kept telling him there's nothing I can do about it. He made the decision at the end of the day. I'm really sorry that he's lost so much money. As I stepped into the road, he shot me in the back of my head, or shot her in the back of her head. And it was such a shocking moment for me, because when you go into those regressions, you're not imagining things. You are watching them unfold. So you have no clue where it's going to take you next. You know, it's like you don't know what's coming next. You don't know what's going to happen. You just observe, and through the expertise of the practitioner, they ask the right questions to bring you to the right moments, to take you down the right path of memories, so that you can be, or so that you can access the information that would help you in this lifetime. And so, dropping into that lifetime, I had no idea where I was. And she asked the question to look down, see what do you see, and then I see feet, and then I scan up the body, up the feet, up the legs, and I see, oh, it's a little girl. And so this whole thing is just kind of unfolding like that. And at the end of the session, that was one of the significant moments. There was a bunch of other stuff that happened, but that was the one that really stood out. And after that, she made a request that no longer influenced this lifetime. And the higher self revealed afterwards that the reason for the headaches was connected to that. I have not had a single headache, that kind of headache, since then. That was about maybe 4 years ago. So, significant experience, significant moment. Another one of them that happened was in a breathwork experience. This one didn't have so much information, because I wasn't with the practitioner who was asking questions and kind of leading me to different things, different places, different experiences. But as I was doing this breathwork, I suddenly was like, had a flash of a memory. I was in a memory of being a cheetah in this lifetime. Not in this lifetime, on this earth. In a different lifetime, I had a flash of being a cheetah running somewhere. There was no context around it, no information, no nothing else. I was by myself running as a cheetah. And then in the same breathwork, another flash of being in Egypt. I don't know at what period, but I was a little girl and I had blonde hair. This is the reason I don't know at what period. I had blonde, really like wavy hair, like ramen. And this is such I was sitting on the floor and my mom was sitting on a bed and she was brushing my hair. I was between her legs as she brushed my hair. That was all I got. When it was, especially because it was in Egypt location, but with blonde hair, I don't know. So that was it. Another one in the same breathwork experience was, this one was really powerful, and it actually popped up again during one of my Reiki sessions. When I was doing Reiki on a client, she popped up and kind of supported the healing, you know, along with a shaman from a previous life as well as a witch from a previous life, and myself. So 4 selves were layered on of this. I'll explain who she was in a moment. Of this one self, I'm in somebody's driveway. Of this one self, this big self, which I will explain now, along with the shaman, along with the witch, and my current self in this lifetime. 4 of us layered on, all doing the healing during that Reiki session. The big self that I'm speaking about was, I was a light being, and I was massive, much bigger than the earth, and I was hovering over the earth, protecting it. It was a very motherly, nurturing feeling. There were other light beings behind me to the sides. I didn't see or communicate with them or know who they were, but they were there. And I had this sense of knowing that that part of me had created the earth, along with whichever other beings had been a part of the earth's creation. So that one, you know, talking about any of this stuff is really weird, because it's not this self in this lifetime. It's a different self, a different aspect, a different part of something that I am connected to. And so sharing about this feels really a little bit uncomfortable, actually, but nonetheless, there was that self. That one is the one that popped up during a Reiki session. And funny enough, the client in that Reiki session experienced herself as being a massive light being with a crown, and she described the crown, not a normal looking crown. It had some things on the sides, but the thing that was the same for both of us was that whatever we were wearing was a part of who we were. So it was like we're wearing a garment, but there's no separation between the body and the garment. It's like there's no legs. It's kind of just like flowing material, but it's light body. It's all part of the same thing, if that makes sense. And so at the end of the Reiki session, we had a chat, and she shared her experience, and I was like, that's really cool. I experienced this light body part of myself come in for the healing. And so it was a really beautiful moment. There's so many of these synchronicities in those energy healing sessions. But yeah, so that was the one. The other was, I experienced myself as an old woman who had, like, she had really dirty feet with these long crusty toenails, and it was back in the day, you know, before there were roads, out in a field. She lived in like a cobblestone house, and she had a husband who died before her, and they'd had, I think, 2 children, 1 child or 2 children, and that one of their children had a little baby that she had a very close relationship with, a nephew, not a nephew, a grandson. And she, or I, in that lifetime got to experience myself dying. So experience the process of dying alone in that cottage. It was strange and uncomfortable and a little bit scary. So anyway, that was the one. The latest one was during another QHHT session that I did last year. I think it was last year, yeah. And in that session, I was a guy who lived in a village as well. And I had a family, a wife and children, and I knew I had to leave them because there was something deeper that was calling me that I couldn't do when I was with them. I knew I had to leave. Oh, the dude coming into their driveway. Sorry, or somebody else who's turning. Oopsie. Somebody else turning. Anyway, and so in that lifetime, I basically left my family and went to something had happened. I'd killed somebody. I remember now. I'd accidentally killed somebody, and I had all this grief and this torture, this inner torture, and I knew I had to leave my family, not because of the killing, but because there was something deeper that had to be explored. So I left, and I was sitting out in the fields at some lake, and this old man came to sit beside me. This old dude with white hair, white beard, came to sit beside me and told me I need to come with him. He was there for me, and he knew more about me than he should have, because I didn't know him. I'd never met him. And so I went with him, and he took me. We walked for days and days, eventually into the mountains, very isolated, and we stayed in a cottage, and he had me chopping wood literally every day. Chop wood, chop wood, chop wood, make food, chop wood, chop wood, chop wood, make food, chop, make fire. And it was just, it began to get a little bit like, is this all we're going to do forever? There's this beautiful place on Nottingham Road called Blueberry Cafe, and they have, I think it's llama, either llama or alpaca, maybe alpaca, that they have here, and really lovely restaurant. I haven't been in a while, but I've driven up here not too long ago, just because I like the area. But anyway, that's where I am now. And eventually, after a long while of doing this chopping, he took me to the side of the river and he told me to sit and watch the water. So I sat and I watched the water, and this is what I had to do every day, sit and watch the water. And eventually lessons started to flow. He never spoke, you know, he never said much or anything at all. It's just, I just had to sit there in silence and watch the water. And I did this for a long time as well. And I started to learn about flow and letting go, and learning about how the water, without force, cuts into the riverbank and changes the form of the land, cuts into the rocks, you know, cuts in and changes things without force. It just flows. I started to learn about that, but not through his teachings, just through observation and through silence. And then he took me to watch grass, to just basically watch the grass and the flowers. And I had to be in this field for an extended period and just observe the movement of the grass. And this went on for days and days and days, weeks probably, for each of these things. Maybe even months, who knows? But it was a long time for each of these lessons. And I learned something from observing that. And then I had to observe the wind. And I sat and observed the wind without his instruction. I just sat, I moved in the wind. And that was the lesson that had to be learned, was the silence and the learning of release, the learning of letting go, of flow, of non-resistance, of non-attachment. Non-attachment was a big lesson in that life, because I had to let go of my family. Anyway, this old man then left me. Off he went to wherever he went to. And I got old in these mountains. I grew really old doing this, being in silence by myself for that entire lifetime. the majority of that lifetime, until one day the old man returned and he looked exactly the same. Nothing had changed. And he said, it's time. It's time for us to go and to teach this to others. And so off we went together. And we walked and we walked and we walked until we got to a village. And in this village, there was a wooden like structure. It was on 4 pedestals, like wooden poles, and it was just a platform, just a flat wooden platform. And the two of us sat there in silence for days until others started to sit with us. And more people came and more people sat with us. And this continued on, and they started to learn the lessons of silence. The people of that village started to learn. And then there were not disciples, sound like such a... Yeah, let's just say disciples, because it sums up what was happening. Is there were people who'd learned from the two of us, who wanted to come with us to the next place to continue to support this process of sharing this wisdom through silence. And off we went with our group of people. Some stayed behind, some came, and we went and we sat and we taught others how to be silent and how to be still, just through being silent and being still. And the groups grew and grew until the old man eventually said, okay, now you're on your own. And he left me to do that. And I continued on for a long time until eventually I died in one of the villages, and they buried me. And that was that lifetime. And those are the main ones that I can remember of the regressions that I've had. Some of them happening spontaneously, some of them happening with the intention to regress, but having no idea where you were going to regress to. Like the same thing with the man that became an old man who taught the wisdom of silence. Looking down at my feet and then looking up and then looking around and seeing fire in the distance in the village that I'd just run out of, looking around and seeing that I was in an open space of field, no idea where I was going, until the practitioner asks me to backtrack and go back into the village and see what had just happened. Why'd I just leave? How was I feeling in that moment? Taking me forward again and watching this whole thing unfold. Really powerful lessons, but also that old man, the teachings of that old man, the lessons I knew were things that were already being integrated into the stuff that I teach in this lifetime. And you know, I was never interested in exploring past lives, because I felt there was nothing there. Not in a judgmental sense, not in a sense of rejection, but in a sense of I was identified again with something far beyond all the ego selves, all this in-between stuff. It was like, you don't need to play there. Don't distract yourself with that in-between stuff. Realize the true self. And so I had not entertained any of the in-between stuff. Stuff would surface, and like the wings, the etheric wings, all these experiences, stuff would surface. And I would be curious about them, but the information would find me a year and a half later without my searching. It would come up. The answers would reveal themselves. But you know, as I'm sharing this, I suddenly got the feeling of that old man, the wisdom of that old man sharing this. Yeah, but you know, since contracting, there's been a great desire to know who I am in between the I am everything and the ego self. And so I'm honoring that desire to know. And I guess that's what's being revealed now over the past few months and the last 2 years really is, okay, you want to know who you were and who you are and the experiences you've had in between. Here we go. We're going to show you. So sometimes I kind of get frustrated with the time that it takes for each of these things to be revealed, and them not being revealed on my time, the ego's time, at my will, in my way, but they're always revealed. So I'm going to leave that with you guys, and I'd be really curious to know what past life experiences you've had and what you've been exposed to, in whatever way you've been exposed to them. I don't think I've forgotten any. If I have, I'll put it in the caption. But anyway, I wish you guys lots and lots of love and wisdom and self-realization. And I will see you guys soon.